Most people say they want to find their soulmate, their perfect partner. But how many have actually defined exactly what that is? If you are already hitched, do you think the outcome would have been different had you pre-specified success? I confess that I didn't have a clue what I was looking for. It was over 25 years ago, and I had just been dumped by my then fiancé. I moped around for months and complained to anyone who would listen. My hairdresser got tired of hearing about it and said, "Sarah, I'm not going to cut your hair again if you don't do something to get back on the dating scene." I would have to find a new hairdresser. That was worse than being told I had to find a new gynecologist. I would do almost anything to avoid that. So I placed a free 3-line ad in the local paper. Remember newspapers? That's how it was done prior to online dating sites. Now you can't say much in a 3-line ad, so I got few responses. But hey, I'd taken the action I needed to get my hair cut, and it had not cost me a dime. My little ad, however, ran right next to a 21-line ad that I found quite intriguing. It took me all weekend to get up enough nerve to call, and when I did, I got a recording that said, "The gentleman who placed this ad would much prefer that you send a written response with how you satisfy the criteria." What? You want an application? Is this a job I'm applying for? I was pissed. So click, I hung up. And I took that advertisement and balled it up and stuffed it in my purse and didn't think about it until the next day when I was on a plane to San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I'd be working for the next week. Now, in those days, we did not travel with laptops or smart devices, so I had little to occupy me but a magazine. Remember magazines? And this flight was 4 hours long. So eventually, I pulled that ad from my purse and spread it out and began to think. You see, I have many years of experience in talent management, the hiring, training and development, and performance evaluation of employees. And it hit me that the process of interviewing for a job is very much like the process of screening a potential romantic partner. In a job interview, you are almost always asked, "Why do you want this job?" The employer wants to know that you have interests similar to theirs so that you'll be happy. Happy employees are more productive and they're less likely to leave prematurely. The employer wants to know that you have the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are required to be successful. And they want to know that you're going to fit into the culture. It's the same with applying for a significant relationship. Do you have sufficient interest that you're going to enjoy spending time with your prospective partner? Do you have the strength behaviors that you'll get to use? And more importantly, do you have the relationship skills to be successful? And will the culture of the relationship meet your needs? You know, I got so excited with this line of thinking that I could have danced in the airplane aisles. But the fasten seatbelt sign was on. So instead, I looked at the ad before me and thought about the fun I could have with it. And I decided that what I was going to do is apply in the most sarcastic way possible, but try and turn the tables a bit because he still had the upper hand, very much like the hiring manager. So I took every one of the descriptors in that ad and I listed it down the left-hand side of a piece of loose leaf paper. And on the right, I wrote the most sarcastic response possible, but one that also sold me. This was like a manual version of an Excel spreadsheet. For example, the ad asked if I were classy. So I wrote classy down the left, and on the right I wrote, "I know the difference between Libby glass and Waterford crystal, but I've been known to sip champagne from a Dixie cup." And I called this the screen test. Screen stood for scrutiny, creating reaction, evoking emotional nausea. And just like in a real job application process, I wrote a nice little cover note that said, should you agree with me that I meet all the criteria in the advertisement, I would be happy to talk further. And then I mailed this gem of an application back to the mainland US. I did not include a return address or a phone number. I did include an email address as a clue, but remember, this was almost 25 years ago, and few people had email addresses. And the last line of that cover note was a bit of a challenge. If you're as good as you think you are, I am sure that you will find me. And once again, I forgot about it. Until several weeks later, I'm back on the mainland, and I get a telephone call, and what do you know? It's the mystery hiring manager. How had he found me with just sarahsales@aol.com as a clue? I didn't ask because I wanted to appear cool. We talked for hours that night, though, about our mutual interests. This is mostly what filled the 21 lines of his ad. Do you like NPR, dogs, travel? The match on his long list of interests was incredible, and we had a lot to talk about. I was sufficiently engaged. I wanted to spend more time with him, so we set a date. Now I'm getting ready for this date, and I'm really thinking about the parallels with the job hiring process and thinking about the questions that I need to be asking next. So I focused on the second question that is almost always asked in a job interview. Why do you think you will be successful? The employer wants to know that you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be successful on the job. So I thought about what are the corollaries in screening for a romantic partner. Well, one aspect of this is, do you get to use your strength behaviors? These are what we have learned as a way to be successful, and as much as possible, we want to be able to use as much of that in a relationship. An example of this is your particular style of organizing. It often plays out in a relationship as your preference and your partner's preference for how you order a room and how you deal with clutter in the house. You can begin to see how radically different styles might create conflict in a relationship. But the most important aspect of this line of questioning has to do with your relationship skills. Have you learned how to deal with conflict when your different styles collide? In an interview, an interviewer will often ask a specific behavioral question that goes along the lines of this. When you had a conflict in your last job, with a coworker, how did you deal with it and what was the outcome? The corollary in a relationship is, when you had a fight with your last girlfriend, what did you do and how did you resolve it? Ask this of your potential partner and see if he or she has the relationship skills to be successful. Now, I wish I'd had the guts to ask that specific question. I didn't, but I later learned that we both had some work to do in the relationship skills department. Now, the third question in an interview is, why do you think you will fit into our culture? This question is designed to see if your usual behavior, aka your strengths, are going to create stress for your coworkers. But it's also designed to see if the relationship culture is going to create you stress. The corollary in a relationship is this: will the relationship culture meet your needs? For example, how much financial security do you need in a relationship? How much debt can you tolerate without having panic attacks? It differs for each individual, and it often takes some introspection to figure out what that is. What often causes conflict in a relationship is when somebody's strength behavior collides with the other person's needs. For example, my husband likes to make quick decisions. That's a strength for him. I need time to process decisions. Pushing me for a quick decision is a recipe for a big fight. But we've learned that now and have come up with ways to address it. Now the problem is that personal ads, online profiles, job ads, and job screening for that matter, do a poor job of surfacing strengths and needs. There was nothing in that ad about decision-making preferences, your preference around organizing, whether you needed to unwind by yourself or with others, or how to talk to each other. Kind of things that are pretty important to know if you're going to have kids. Now, my husband and I learned about our strengths and needs as the result of our premarital counseling. We were actually given a business assessment, one that's designed primarily to help teams with their teamwork skills. The counselor who interpreted the results said, "I'm not going to tell you not to get married, but I will tell you what you're going to fight about for the rest of your married life." And she was right. But with knowledge of our interests, our skills, and our needs, we were able to craft the rules that we needed in order to fight fair. For example, we do have radically different styles on organizing. We solved this problem by designating rooms that are his and rooms that are mine. I cannot say anything about the clutter in the family room. But if he leaves something lying on the counter in the kitchen, I can throw it out without discussion. We learned how to talk to each other in times of need. I need direct feedback. He needs assurance and validation. We learned how to deal with our differing styles around decision making. I need time to process decisions, so no big decision financially is made without giving me 48 hours to process it. I don't think we're the only couple who didn't know what our strengths and needs were. So let's take another lesson from the corporate world. The corporate America has been giving tools to individuals to help them with their teamwork skills for years. So why don't we do something similar for couples early in the stages of their early in the stages of their courtship? And that's my idea worth sharing. I think all couples should be enabled with an app that helps them collectively explore their interests, their strengths, and their needs, what they can do with it so they can make an informed decision around whether they're compatible, but also craft the rules that help them to fight fair. Here's an example of what that might look like. Now, it's obvious by now that I did marry the gentleman who placed this ad. But you're probably wondering, how did he find me with just Sarah Sales at AOL.com as a clue? I don't know. There was some mumbo jumbo about I've always been close to law enforcement and I got some help. Do you think maybe he's a spy or a private eye and he's been spoofing me all these years? Well, it's possible. And it all points out that no process and no app for that matter is perfect. But this is also true in job screening. But with knowledge of interests, strengths, and needs, you can craft the rules to fight fair that allow you to continue to learn about a potential partner. Now, I started this talk by talking about whether or not you could define what your perfect partner was like. For me, that individual is fun to be with, supports me in a way that feels great to me, and fills all my relationship needs. And you know what? That's more about me than the other person. And it depends upon my interests, my strengths, and my needs. Do you know yours? Remember, the stakes are higher than just getting a haircut. This is the most important job of your life. And you're not only applying for it, you are the hiring manager.